Yo, what's up guys, but I'm Fire here back from the video, and today we're going to be bringing you guys my full Seattle Seahawks offensive ebook. This is probably the second most used playbook in the game, probably besides Colts, which we already made an ebook on. This is a little bit different. It's going to include two main formations, so if you like using these two formations better than sticking in bunch, this is for people that kind of like to switch it up a bit, whereas if you're running Colts, you're probably sticking in bunch offset the entire game. But for this one, you'll see a lot of people run bunch and then audible to this bunch tight end. So we'll be showing both formations in this video, all my setups from every play that I like to run. And we got a really stacked gun bunch. This is definitely the best regular bunch that's not offset in the game. Taking a look at some of the plays that we have a base there, but we have clear out, SE out, Z spot and go. We got bunch trail, bench pivot, which you cannot see because my camera's in the way, but you got those two plays. Then you got plays like tight end hook that are decent, inside cross, which again you cannot see. Verticals, flood, mesh post, read option, just a ton of good plays. Really stacked gun bunch. It is a lot different than the bunch offset. If you guys watched my video on this regular gun bunch, it was a gameplay. I might put that in the description if I remember. Then you will know that these setups are a lot different than traditional bunch tight end. Or traditional bunch offset. Now, bunch tight end, kind of the same stuff. We'll show all the setups that I like out of that as well. Before we get into the video, make sure you guys drop a big thumbs up on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you want more of these ebooks in the future, and let me know the next ebook you want to see on offense and defense. Defense is tough. I've been seeing a lot of people run different defenses. So once a potential playbook meta stabilizes, we'll bring you guys a defensive ebook. But until then, we got this offensive ebook. Let's jump straight into it. All right, guys, here we are out on the field. Now I'm going to talk about the audibles that I like to run personally. This is a pretty heavy passing offense. You don't see too many people running the ball out of this. So as far as our audibles go, we got bunch trail, verticals. I like inside cross, and then flood. Again, you can switch these up depending on what you like. I would keep these two plays minimum at the top here, bunch trail and verticals. And we're going to start out with this bunch trail play. By far, one of the best one-play touchdowns in the game. Just to show you guys the one-play touchdown, this is cover 3 stock. Again, make sure your bunch is on the wide side, but all we're going to do is delay fade A for extra protection. You don't even have to do this. You could just run it stock and it would work, but we're just going to double team so we get extra protection, kind of roll out here, wait, and then you see we can just pass lead to the right side, and he should run by him. That is one of the faster safeties in the game as well with Justin Reed in that spot. So you see, it does take a while for it to develop. What I've seen some people do is motion this receiver in. You can certainly do that. It can be kind of a tell though, so it can be a tell that you're actually running bunch trail whenever you do that. So that might be something you want to kind of be careful with, but there you see again, pretty simple. One play touchdown. That post also very good against man coverage as well. So now that we showed that, let's get into some of the actual other setups that we like. Now, the first setup that I'm going to go with is to delay fade A. We're just going to throw B on a little flat and Y on an out to the left. So here's a look at the setup. You got a corner out, delay fade, this baby out route, and then, of course, the backside flat and the backside post. So definitely just a solid play design. This is similar to one of the flood setups that we'll actually be running, but again, just simple. When I throw this corner out, I do like to roll out, so I would recommend when you're running bunch to have some kind of a mobile quarterback like a Daniel Jones or anyone else. Stafford, he's not my favorite because he is so immobile, but when you throw this corner out, it's definitely better if you can get outside to throw it. Whereas if you stand from the pocket, it can be a lot more difficult to complete that corner route. So I would highly recommend trying to scramble out, and especially when you have the delay fade, it's something that you could easily do. So next setup, we're going to block our running back. We're going to go ahead, drag B. We're actually going to motion B across, just like here. Now we have a little drag, angle route, corner route, and deep post. This has been one of my favorite setups for years, actually, out of the bunch trail. I've been running this setup for years, probably 3 or 4 years out of bunch trail. This is just super easy. It's a setup that you don't need any abilities for. You can run every single play. And it would be difficult to defend. You see with A, you can kind of wait and he will get open similar to an actual post route. It is a little bit slow to develop, so you need some good protection, but if you have that, you're good to go. So one more time, just going to block a running back, drag B, motion him from right to left, snap the ball with the little motion. Not sure what happened with our blocking there. That's the Seahawks O-line for you, but if you can roll out to the right, this setup would also kind of be helpful to do that if you, of course, can. Next setup for bunch trail is going to be to drag A, block your running back, and then go ahead hitch B. You can either run this with no motion like this, or what you can go ahead and do is motion that hitch route out just a little bit. I've ran it both ways. It's successful both ways. It doesn't really affect the play too much, but if you want that hitch to maybe help in pulling down some zones, I believe motioning them out helps. Or sometimes it just, if its zone drops, then it won't really matter, and you can just motion out that hitch to get a little bit extra space. So the setup's just definitely solid. Again, it mixes things up. This tight end drag will a lot of times just be, wide open, as it is seen right there. And yeah, tight ends are very useful in this game, so this play will definitely kind of maximize that with the angle route and these little drags, and of course that delay fade. So again, I can kind of roll out here with this hitch. I can also playmaker it. But yeah, this play is just going to maximize your quarterback's legs. You're going to be able to kind of scramble out to the right and make plays with a guy like Russell Wilson throwing the corner, or that deep post over the top. And that deep post also will beat things like cover 4. It's very good against man coverage as well. So overall, bunch trail is good. One last way that you could maybe run it, which I don't really even run it this way, is a setup potentially like this, where you kind of make it a Z-spot type thing. This is not my favorite, but that corner out would potentially get a little bit more space if you ran it that way. Next play is going to be verticals. Now this verticals is a little bit worse than the bunch offset one. That's one of the benefits of running bunch offset, the vert tap back under, because you have this stock little running back route that is so good, but you can pretty much turn this play into that. But you also do have a little outside fade that could be better than Metcalf's route, but this verticals play is still very good. You still have this deep crosser, and that's really what matters. You still have these wheel routes, which is really the only thing that matters anyway. So first setup's going to be to put Y on an out to the right. You're going to put him on the out to the right. Then you're going to go ahead delay fade A. So here's a look at the setup. Just going to snap the ball. You can't quick snap this play as well as you would be able to out of bunch offset, because you do have to put the running back on a route. So you have to make 2 hot routes instead of 1, which means sometimes your quarterback will get a little pointing animation. But I've seen it where I can get to the line, make these 2 adjustments. And overall, this is just one of the best setups in the game, one of the best plays in the game. Definitely not easy to defend this, and we're not even really doing that much stuff. Again, if someone wants to get really adjusty, then that wheel route could be open. You see how you could potentially even fit that in right there. This play gets wide open against cover 3 if you actually motion him out. I know not too many people do that this year, where they just motion out this wheel route, but if you do that, you will notice that Eskridge will actually get wide open against cover 3, and you can throw it early. So the running back route will be able to pull down a curl flat, and it should be wide open in that sense. But of course, what really makes the play is going to be the running back route combined with the crosser, and then of course like a delay fade. Again, this wheel route's nice. Metcalf, he just kind of pulls things over, but yeah, just being able to kind of roll out, pump fake with Y, and then you release A, throw it to him. Just super difficult to defend, and that crosser will almost have to be usered because it beats man coverage, and it's so deep, like 40 yards down the field, that no zone is really ever able to defend Tyler Lockett's route. You see just how deep he runs that. And that was a bad pass lead. You usually want to pass lead to the outside, but just pretty much an unguardable route with Tyler Lockett right there. The next thing I want to show is going to be the cover 3 beater, which will be on a streak. You can still throw the running back on the route. You could also block him, but just going to be something simple like this. You wait for the wheel route to pull down the outside third, and then you just pass lead either up the field or to the outside. I'm more of an outside type of guy, just so that free safety doesn't get any chance to make a play on the ball, but I have seen people do it both ways. Again, even this setup is not bad. You still have the crosser, you still have the running back route, so a lot of times even if they recognize that it's a cover 3 beater, and if they do use it, you still have 2 other routes to throw that will be wide open against any other coverage. If he does bluff you, maybe it's cover 1 instead of cover 3, but he just doesn't press anybody, you still will, again, have people open. He can hit Chris Carson in the flat, and this route will be open all game. Most yellow zones will not defend this either. So verticals, this setup is, really one of the best setups in the game. A little bit of a unique setup that I don't see too many people run out of verticals is going to be to drag A. And I can actually just run it like this, where I put the running back on his route and drag the tight end. I've ran it like this before. Definitely a good setup. It gives you an actual high-low read with the crosser, which you don't even need for the crosser to go get open, but it can be nice. And it can force your opponent, if you're running a lot of verticals, to actually put a zone on the left side, whereas he might just be defending for that crosser. If you go with a setup like this all game, he has no reason to put any kind of a hard flat on the left side. But if I mix in something like this, then it's certainly a possibility where he might have to do that. And we can also kind of piggyback off that with some other setups as well. I don't have to leave the wheel route out, so another idea I had out of this would be to put beyond maybe a super deep in route and then kind of motion him all the way out. So I could run something like this. This setup, very, very solid. You get a little bit of a running back route, you get that in route. This would be a good man coverage setup, if you ask me. Another thing that you can actually do out of this, another thing you could do is if you wanted to still block the tight end, I can maybe just drag B or put him on like an in route. Something like this would not be, again, a terrible setup. Just gives you another underneath route. So you can easily mix up just one route and it would mess up all these guys' adjustments if they were just defending for that one setup, which the first setup is the one you should run the most, but these setups can definitely still be very solid. Hopping into play number 3, it's going to be the inside cross, which will kind of act as your double post per se out of the bunch in comparison to the bunch offset. Kind of similar to the double post in a couple of ways. It is different though. So the similarities would be this wheel route. This wheel route's a lot more inside like the verticals one, whereas the double post ones runs past the numbers and then cuts upfield. So it is probably a little bit worse in this instance. But we will run some setups that actually utilize it a little bit better. You still have the C route. The C route again, it's a little bit worse because it cuts so much upfield, and we still can throw it, but it's not as good in the outside thirds. Can kind of defend it a little bit better. But we still have the running back route. We have wheel route. We have a crosser. So you can see some of the similarities. The first setup I like out of this was one that I was running last year. You drag RB and then you just flat B. So here's your setup. Pretty simple. You're going to motion Eskridge out on this. You definitely want to motion him out, but it opens up the wheel route a lot with Gerald Everett. And in verticals, you see we didn't really keep the wheel route off that often, so this would potentially be able to catch some people off guard. Again, you have your little running back route and drag route, so you have your nice little man coverage beaters with those two guys. Running back route, definitely solid. He gets opened up a lot with kind of the clear out stuff. It really just makes the user pick between 3 different routes that he would have to defend. If it's man coverage, he still has to pick between 2. So, and even Metcalf can get open. I'll try and show you. He doesn't really get open. Again, you see with cover 3 just because how much it's just a little bit inside. He doesn't break out as far to the right, and he seems to cut up field a little bit more at an angle, whereas you would kind of want him to square off his route. So that route's not as good, but it is good against man coverage, which I'm not going to audible, but yeah, overall just solid. Here we can hit Chris Carson, and he's going to run his route very, very well there. So just overall one of the best setups out of this. Some other setups we can do if you want to actually turn it into an actual double post setup. What you could do is delay fade A, put RB on a drag, and then put B on a kind of an in route like this. I would probably motion him out just a little bit here, but this would be your double post type setup. And if I don't want to motion him out, I definitely don't have to, and I could just run it that way. But yeah, even just mixing in these setups, if you just mix in this one setup, it would still be a very good play because he's not going to be expecting it at all. Again, here would be another alternative of the setup. You just run it like this. You don't motion him out, and that in route would still be able to get open, as you see right there. So overall, definitely a solid setup right there. As far as some of the other things that you could maybe do out of this that I've ran, I put B on a little backside curl, drag RB with A, probably block him or delay fade him. So you could go with something like this instead, where the curl route would create kind of a curl flat concept with Carson. Man coverage, pretty good route as well, and it allows a little bit more spacing, whereas if you don't want to congest the middle of the field as much as some of these other setups kind of do. So the last thing that you can do is kind of just run it stock. If you just wanted to put B on the flat and that would be your only adjustment, you could do that. But I do think the drag is a little bit better, but if you wanted to open things up a little bit more for your running back, this would be probably the setup that you could do out of it. So overall, inside cross, no, it's not the most popular play. I don't see too many people run this inside cross, but it is still one of the better plays. And I like to have it in my audibles because a lot of times I will forget about this play if it's not in my audibles, and I just won't run it at all. And you want to have it so you can run it if you want mesh post over it or something like that. That's perfectly fine, but I do recommend you guys run this inside cross a couple of times a game, 5 times a game, something like that. All right, guys, setup number 4 is going to be the flood play. And with this flood play, we got a couple of setups. The first one, just to throw Y on a little out to the left, and you run it like this. Just gives you 2 flats, 2 routes. This setup's pretty good against double Mabel. You still have that out route that you can throw, the in route. If they're not double mabling, you got 2 flats that you can throw. Even if he uses one of them will be open as well. You still have that little, fade route as well with that wide receiver that could get open down the seam if you wanted to throw that. So just overall solid play. Again, another quick snap type of a play that you could throw. You got the in route, which these routes won't be as open against stock coverage because 2 hook curls actually take away it pretty well. But majority of people will either have 1 yellow zone out there, which will be their user, or they might have 1 additional, which will open up the flats. If they do double mabel, it'll only be their user in the middle of the field. You just make a read between X or RB. Pretty simple concept right there. Setup number 2 is going to be A on a delay fade, and we're going to still throw the running back on his route, but flat B. So here's setup number 2. Again, just some extra protection for you. You can still hit RB on the sidelines pretty effectively. This one will open it up maybe a little bit earlier because you have that flat from the receiver spot instead of the tight end spot, if that makes any sense. But once again, just solid stuff here. You still got your running back route. That in route, again, it's very solid. That in route will be open a lot of times. You just have to make sure you look at it, because I find myself sometimes when I run this play that I do not look at the in route as much as I should, and that ultimately costs me, because if you don't throw the in route by the time it breaks, a lot of times you're in late play situations, you won't have anybody open, you'll kind of have to scramble. But yeah, you can definitely roll out, hit this out route if you can. Rolling out is not the worst way to run it because you can roll out and kind of throw that backside in route still effectively. But yeah, overall, these are kind of the 2 main setups I have for this. I have seen people just drag A and maybe hitch B, something like this, bunch trail type of a concept, which you could do, still flat B, but you can kind of run things like this. You can definitely mix it up if you wanted to in that kind of a way. But yeah, don't have too many setups. Again, FUD. I still run this play a ton, but just because you don't have 20 setups for a play does not make it terrible. Again, you could get a little bit more creative and run it different ways. This setup, not terrible. Hitch B and still put that running back on his route. This would open up B a little bit more and could potentially pull down some of those hook curl zones. Or if it's match coverage, that could even open up RB. But if they are running cover 4, flood is the best play to beat that, just because this out route gets wide open against cover 4. So trust me, if he's running cover 4, run flood stock just with that running back route, and that out route will be absolutely money. Alright guys, hopping into our next set of 4 plays, and we are going to go through quickly because this formation has a lot more plays. We still have to go to bunch tight end, so we are going to go through these setups pretty quickly, show it once or twice, and then move on. But starting out with bench pivot, we're just going to wheel RB, or not wheel, I don't know why I said that. You're going to fade RB, and this is just solid setup. You can kind of roll out if you don't want to. You can still hit that corner out, but rolling out will just give you the option to throw that backside in route, which again is one of the best ways to open it up, because when you roll out, the user's focus shifts to that right side, and a lot of times it opens up guys like DK Metcalf on that. Against heavy zone, it's not as open, but you see you can still throw it, and a lot of times the user will have to be on the absolute sideline to defend that corner route. So this is the first way to run it. You have that little baby out route, which still is wide open with Eskridge. I could sit there and throw that a lot of the time. And if they don't have a 5-yard zone drop, even if they do, you see curl flat, it looks like it's in position to defend it. It still is wide open. So he ultimately doesn't really defend anything. Both routes are wide open. But depending on what the zone drops are, that could be a little bit different. But if they are playing 10-yard zone drops, which is a lot of times what I do out of cover 3, this corner out will be wide open. Some other things that you could do, I could just streak B or fade B. I kind of leave this super inside zig route. That's not my favorite route, but you see it does get pretty opened up. So that is something you can do. Usually if I'm doing that, I will just go ahead, fade B and put RB on a little baby out, something like this. If I don't want the out, I could of course flat him, but this is just a different way to run it. This used to work pretty well as a cover 3 beater. That's why this setup was popular, but it doesn't really beat cover 3 anymore, so it's not as useful, but you can kind of roll out, hit RB. It's just similar thing to the other one, but just a little bit different in the setup. Could potentially confuse your opponent, especially if he's manning up players, manning up B or RB. If you notice him doing that, this is something that you can kind of take advantage of. Now, one thing I forgot to say is that you could be throwing your running back on the little out to the left. You could do that for pretty much every setup where he's blocking, but he actually does a really good job of opening up DK's route. So he will open up DK a lot of times when you throw that running back on that out route. He will open up DK Metcalf. So again, just putting him on the out route, and there you see you can throw DK right on the break. So if that's something you're interested, you want to have that out route on the field. Next play, we're going to talk about read option. Read option, I like it a little bit better than base. Of course, you have the quarterback, chance, you can just run the ball with the quarterback if you could. That's definitely an option if you have a mobile quarterback, but I just feel like the handoff's a little bit better, especially when you're running it from this side where the quarterback will hand it off slower. I definitely like the way that he hands the ball off here, just a little bit better than the base would, just because the base is so slow. You see we can break it out for kind of 15 yards there. Of course, if you flip it, it doesn't really matter for this play, but if you were running base, the handoff would be a lot faster if you ran bunch from this side than the other side, which a lot of you know. But read option, they're pretty much the exact same. That's something I like, just a little bit consistent, where I could run it from both sides and it works without, something changing or me running into a blocker, which a lot of times at base, out of bunch, I notice I struggle to be a little bit patient. Sometimes when you're patient, you get hit in the backfield, especially in next-gen Madden. But read option, not really an issue. I can just run it pretty much like an inside zone. So you see there, we're eating them alive, picking up some solid yards. So if you were running the ball, I would highly recommend this read option over the base. Personally, read option is not in every bunch. It really is only in Seattle. I don't think it's in Washington or Detroit, so it is pretty exclusive. Next play, clear out, SE out. I don't have too many setups for this play. This play is not my favorite, but we will go through some of the stuff, and we're going to go through quickly because I have a couple of different unique setups. First one to be drag RB, motion him across. You can smart out A, put Y on that little baby out once again. So Everett, he gets into a pretty good spot. His route is kind of difficult to user as well. If you want to commit to Everett, you're going to give up some other things. You also have two fades, so if it is kind of a press man coverage look, then these could get open. Realistically, I could run it like this if I want to. Maybe I curl B, drag RB. There's a lot that you could do with this setup again. You could just do a lot with that post route, and you see he kind of acts as a deeper crosser as well. So a guy like Darren Waller running that, we actually score a touchdown here, but definitely some things you could do. Going back to that first setup that we had, the first setup we had, you could throw RB on a slant instead. So instead of the drag to get him a little bit further down the field, would be a good idea that I had. This is probably the most used setup that I run. Another setup that you could do if you wanted to block your running back, you could just go ahead, drag RB, curl B, and just kind of create a curl flat concept over here. So this would be decent. The curl, not the biggest fan of him, kind of sitting in the middle of the field. You see how a stock hook curl would defend it, but again, if it's only his user in the middle of the field, this combo would be pretty solid. The last setup is going to be on a little deeper out route. You're going to motion. Again, use a lot of motion for this, so main motion will be for mesh post and this clear out SE out, which we'll hop into next. But yeah, these are the setups for the clear out play. Last play in this set of audibles will be mesh post. Mesh post, solid. It's not used as much. First setup is going to be this. You out X, you hitch RB. Just a decent spacing concept. You can open up that wheel route a little bit. So this setup's pretty solid. The formation, or this particular play, is not as good, not as popular as it once was. The next setup, RB on a little slant, motion him across just like here. These are the most pretty known setups. Of course, cover 3, that wheel route will be very solid. Kind of a mix between a wheel and a seam route right there. This is a very good route. One of the better plays in the red zone still. Again, for this setup, you can kind of motion this post out a little bit. It takes longer for him to get there, but it will allow him to be a little bit more open. That was one of my red zone setups for a while. But again, these are pretty much the only two setups that I really run out of mesh post. I don't go to this play nearly as much as I once did. I would personally say it's definitely not worth an audible slot in your bunch with all these good plays that we've talked about. One last setup that you could maybe go with is A on a little drag. You just fade X. Something like this would not be a terrible setup, but there's just better plays out there, and the post isn't as good. It's just not as good as the double post setup, so mesh post just not as good of a play, and I feel like you're kind of wasting plays if you go with the play. So again, not my personal favorite play. I might run it once a game, if that. Alright, now there's a couple of other plays I run a little bit, like tight end hook, Z spot and go. I might run a little bit, but don't have too many setups, and I'm not trying to waste your guys' time going over stuff I don't really run myself. So we're just going to go into the audible system from bunch to bunch tight end, how it works. So if you're running bunch to bunch tight end, what I recommend you guys do is come out with your bunch on the short side of the field, and then you can simply audible very easily like this. It can definitely throw off people. They might expect it, but they will not really be able to defend it that well. And you can just kind of snap the ball here, roll out, just a little good quick snap there. You can throw it deep to DK Metcalf on this post route, which is very, very solid. And yeah, that's just the best way to probably come out and bunch tight end rather than just coming out of bunch tight end out of the huddle. I like to come out and bunch, press that deep end to the right once, and then choose your play. Just can mix them up. You might have different defense for bunch tight end. You never know with these guys, and it could just throw people off. So it's just a little extra step that could be useful, but it doesn't really affect your game in a negative way. All right, so we kind of already showed the cover 3 beater there. Really just the post route will be cover 3, cover 4. There's a couple ways to maximize it, but just again, first way to run PA boot over, delay fade A, keep that play action. You can roll out, hit this crosser again, super deep down the field. You have a drag, crosser, deep post. One of the best combos in the game. Piggybacking off that, RB on a little out to the left. This will create just another man coverage beater. He gets wide open here. This is probably my favorite setup out of the PA boot over. Just because you're still blocking 6, and this is one of the most difficult plays to user and adjust to, because I mean, you have to double flat off the right side immediately off that, unless you're going to take away one with your user. If you are choosing to take away the drag with your user or the crosser, then this route with Chris Carson will be open every time, and I can still have the threat to roll out and release my delay fade, which I do right here. Even though he gets super bumped, he's still going to pick up easy 10 yards, so just it's a headache on the user running this play. And then you include the fact that you can run the ball or run any of these other plays in the formation or audible back to bunch. It's just super difficult. You know, we adjust for a bunch, then you audible to this. You set one adjustment up and you snap it. He's not going to have everything off. And it's just overall insanely difficult on the user, insanely difficult to defend out of adjustments. So overall, it will not be a fun time to play this. It never is when I play it, and I play the bums who just run like the setup like this stock. It's not even fun to defend that. So when you throw out this route, it just makes things a lot more difficult. It makes you need a hard flat on the left side, which against bunch tight end, a lot of people will kind of refuse to put any deeper flats on that left side, just expecting heavy PA boot over. And that will also kind of tie into some of our plays that we go over next. Another setup out of this is going to be the little option with RB. I like to flat B, curl X, go with something like this, motion DK out just a step. And this is just kind of a nice spacing concept. I don't run this play too much. I have seen some people run it. Some people have ran the setup on me. It's pretty solid. So this is just a good way to open up the left side of the field to create spacing, especially again if their adjustments are leaning towards that right side heavily. This setup is certainly solid to open up DK. You see both routes are actually wide open over there. And you still can roll out, hit the delay fade. You have this option that's going to be our kind of hitch route on the right side as well. All right, next play is the inside zone. Not really going to show this too much. And again, if you guys want more in-depth versions of these, I dropped a couple bunch tight end videos with different setups. I dropped a Chiefs version of that, and I dropped this Seattle version, and I think it was a gameplay, I want to say, earlier in the year. But yeah, we have multiple videos with all these setups, so if you want more formation in-depths, we got you covered with some of the other things. But yeah, here's the inside zone. Definitely solid. You see what I like to do, motion out, lock it, either a step or out all the way, and you can really get some nice yards out of this. If you want to run the ball and you're on that right hash mark, you could, of course, audible from bunch to bunch tight end, so you can get a little bit of a better handoff. Forgot to audible here, so we're just going to take off. But yeah, the inside zone, it's solid. I mean, there's not much to it. Again, the way I like to run it is motion, lock it out, snap the ball. You just simply read the blocks, and you should be getting a pretty solid, easy 5-yard gain minimum on this. But you shouldn't really ever get hit in the backfield. There's not many defenses that can kind of gap shoot this bunch tight end inside zone that effectively. Next play is going to be the inside switch. Inside switch is definitely not as good. It took a step back. This corner out, just the fact that you can't smart out it makes it pretty terrible. But it is, it's usable. We're going to go ahead. The first way to run it, just slant Y, motion him across. Like this, you have a post, flat, slant, another flat, and that deeper corner out. So it's not a terrible setup, but it's just not as good. These little high-low read slant to crosser, slant to post combos, just not as good this year. It's better to have things like drags to go with the post routes. So again, it's just not as usable. I don't find myself running this play too much, especially if I'm running heavy bunch. I'll just audible run the PA boot over, maybe the inside zone a little bit, but again, I just don't see myself running this play too often unless I'm running, heavy bunch tight end. You can also smart out this deeper post if you want him to get over those hook curls. If it's, again, single user in the middle of the field, you don't have to smart out it, but, depending on if he's leaving dropping 8 people in coverage. That could be something you could do. Another thing I like to do is wheel RB or out him to the right. That could be an option. This corner out can get open down the field. Be careful with throwing interceptions though. Again, something I could do is just maybe drag Y out RB, something like this. Now B is kind of in the way, so maybe you streak him, but this Tyler Lockett kind of gets in the way of this setup. But this actually opens up the corner out a good amount. So if you're trying to do that, I would recommend the out route. Last play is curl flat corner. Again, out of the bunch tight end, if I'm running Seattle, I don't really run this bunch tight end too much besides the PA boot over. But what I would do out of this is smart out Y, streak X, probably be on a little flatter out route. And then with A, maybe curl him, something like this would probably be my go-to setup out of it. Corner out, it's going to get pretty open down the field. So if you are recognizing his adjustments that he's not really putting many flat zones on the left side of the field, this would be an easy beater for that. Again, streak X, smart route Y, flat B. You could put A on a little in route, deeper in route, put RB on an out route. I could block my running back. So just a couple of options there. Again, you really want to hit this corner out there with a touch pass. We actually had so much space we were still able to complete it. But yeah, I mean, the last thing that I would show you maybe is to turn it into a post. So go with something like this. Here would be my setup. Slant B, hitch X, motion this corner out over, turn it into a post. And this would kind of create a little doubles concept for you guys. So this could be something you run. Again, just using motion snap for posts and slants, not as good. One of the main reasons these combos are not as effective as they were last year. Just takes them a while to get going on the route, and by then you could get shedded or flush out of the pocket to the right side, which would kind of make that route combo a little bit useless. But that's pretty much going to do for the video. There are some other formations like single back deuce close out of this that I like a lot, but we already made a video on that if you want to see that. But that's going to do for the video. If you enjoyed, drop a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more, and peace. I'm out of here.